Hey, how's it going, guys? So one of the very first videos I put up on my channel was regarding the console aim assist changes that Hi-Rez implemented on PS4 and Xbox One, and since then it's received quite a number of views and quite a fair amount of comments and messages, with people asking to provide more feedback and details on my settings for Paladins in-game on console. So I didn't want to release that kind of video much earlier because I still wanted to get used to the settings in general and really find a sweet spot that I'm pretty happy with. And at this point in time, I can say that I'm pretty happy with my settings overall now. So it's something that I'm happy to share with you guys if you're interested. And this video is going to be more of a casual guide for all players playing on console. It's what I personally found to be the sweet spot for my settings personally, but it may not necessarily be right for you depending on your skill and controller and preferences. Right, so let's just jump into the settings for now. And I'll go through each area and I'll kind of explain each one in more detail for you guys. Just before we jump into the controller control settings, I'll just quickly go through the gameplay and highlight some of the things that you should really have enabled to improve your game and your ability to support the team basically. So first up, we have one of the things you should have is the combat log and always show player health. This is pretty good if you're playing support characters because you'll be able to keep track of both your own health and your player's health around the game, and that also goes alongside the show team UI, so that way you'll be able to see not only the ultimates in the team but also their health. This is a new optional change that Hi-Rez have added, where you can now change the centered skill bar to the right hand side if you want. I personally have that disabled so that it's now appearing on the right hand side. Heal feed also shows how much health you're being healed at a certain amount of time, so I've currently set mine to the middle so you can see if someone like a Grok is healing you on with his totem. Another thing that you can also enable is to show cauterize on your team health bar, so you'll be able to see when certain team members are cauterized, so maybe you might prioritize someone else instead for healing. Alright, so let's just jump into the controls. So this is basically my controls as it is today. I've had to play around with a fair bit of it. Scope sensitivity, I've just kept that to 0. I don't usually play snipers these days. Try to avoid playing as Strix and Kinessa, but overall when I play as them, it's been pretty good, so I've just left that as 0. Definitely have disabled inverted if you haven't already, but it comes to personal preference if you like to play your games with inverted controls. Moving on to sensitivity, so the X and Y axis has its own sensitivity options. It really depends on your personal preference as to how high you want to put your sensitivity. So before the console changes in one of the previous patches where they changed the aim assist, it used to be around, I think around 50 on my personal settings, but they've changed it quite a fair bit, and they mentioned last time that if you were playing with around 50, you're probably more around the 30 range now, and I've found that around 33 for me is quite good. So I'll just quickly show you guys what 33 is like. So it still feels pretty tight. To aim at something is still pretty good. If you have it around 50, it's almost impossible to really hit your targets. There's just too much going on. So like you can see here, it's pretty easy to hit that pip. So going back, I'll just show you the difference between the original 50 values. So So this is what it was before. So you can see, maybe if you're like an esports player or something, you'd be able to hit those, but it might be a bit hard for newer or lower level characters. So you can see here, if I'm trying to aim at this thing, the sensitivity is quite high. So I usually keep mine around 33 these days, plus and minus 3. It also depends on the character that you're playing, but I tend to just keep mine around 33 in general. If you're playing someone like Maeve or Drogos, you might want something a little bit higher in sensitivity to get your mobility to move around a lot better. And moving on, so one of the big ones that you can change is the turn acceleration mode. So Hi-Rez has stated that dynamic is the best one to use in game. That's also the one that I currently use. So overall it plays pretty nice. So it's quite smooth moving around. And I'll quickly show you the other ones. So I believe the other one is classic and precision. The classic one feels more like, it feels more robotic. So you can see that you're going more on different angles, like horizontally or vertically, and it's hard to do the diagonal angles. So it's not like as smooth. It's got some weird angles going on with the classic mode. So moving on to precision, this one is pretty weird. I'm not sure if anyone actually uses this one, but it's like really smooth, really precise in the middle area, but once you start pushing quite a fair bit on the control stick, you start to like move really fast, like 100 sensitivity. So like in the very middle, like it's okay, and then once you push hard, it goes all the way up. So I'm not sure if anyone actually uses that one. That one's just really weird to use. So I'll just move it back to dynamic. Again, that's personally the one that I use, but it's up to you guys. That's also the one that Hi-Rez has said it is best with the new aim assist settings. So moving on, turn acceleration, I've boosted mine all the way to 10, and I've actually found that turn acceleration is still quite slow at 10. So when you, for example, if you do a Makoa hook and you're trying to hook them on the side of the level to drop them off the cliff side, it's still not fast enough to get the hook down, to get the hook and then turn your body. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Maybe in a future patch they'll update that, but at the moment I've put it up to 10 and that's still not high enough for me. Moving on to these ones, so I've got the dead zones as well. I think this is relating to the control stick in general, so the dead zones and the control sticks. So I've put mine on medium, and I've found that if you put it on small, the slightest movement of the controller will actually be shown within the game. So I'll put it on minimum and show you guys. So like it's pretty good, it feels nice, but it depends on your controller as well. If you've got a controller that's pretty worn out and doesn't feel that tight, like if the control stick's really loose and worn, maybe you could do something a little bit higher. If it's something new, then it might be pretty good still. So I tend to go with the medium one because my controller's quite old. It's very loose to play as. So this one's pretty good. So the two big ones that I would recommend having a play around with is the turn acceleration and also the dead zone settings. So these two will make a huge difference to the way that your controls feel. The last one that we can go through is the aim assist, friction and magnet strength. I found generally it's not as strong as it used to be, so it doesn't pull your aim assist onto enemies randomly. So I found setting it to around 80 is pretty good. That way you still get a little bit of aim assist, but you don't really feel it forcing you onto the enemy, and at the same time it doesn't feel like it's not there. So I think that's about all. I'll just quickly demo one more time the gameplay with Maeve. So once again, have a play with your sensitivity settings, have a play with the turn acceleration, but I do recommend using the dynamic one if you can. And lastly, change the dead zone settings based on your controller. Again, if you've got an older controller that's more loose, you might want to increase this to medium or maybe even large. But if you've got something that still feels quite tight with the control stick, you might want to go with a more minimum or small settings for both. Some of the things you guys have to think about as well is it depends on the champion that you play. Some characters like Maeve, you might need high sensitivity settings to be able to get around with your mobility, but some of them, for example, if it's someone like Fernando, you probably don't really need that much sensitivity if he's one of the characters that you main. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. If you can give feedback as well in the comments section for other players, it'd be great to share some other ideas and feedback based on what other players are using. And once again, have a play with your settings and hope you guys can find the best ones for you. If you haven't already, just like this video and subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks.